Yeah, so
Good to meet you.
All right, let me meet you too.
Good to be back.
Yeah, this is your old
When I was in
stomping
the
ground.
first district, a lot of times I said, I think this is my third expansion.
Yeah.
So it's great, so we appreciate it.
I think when I come to a place like this and I see the intersection of local, state, federal, and then we see public-private partnerships building something like the building we're in and tackling some of the most challenging problems, it's an exciting time. All the while, creating good jobs and good opportunities. And we were just discussing, I was in a trade mission in Australia, and Melbourne, Australia fancies themselves of being the next medical alley like Minnesota. They looked around the world, and said, what strength do we have that we want to be in Asia? And they saw Minnesota, and that was one of the reasons we're there. Medtronic's been there for 50 years, there's Minnesota companies there, but they're seeing this energy. Dr. Clark used, I thought it was just so interesting of how you view the culture, both in this space and in this city. An 80-year-old startup, this idea about cutting edge to the future, taking chances, taking risks. And the city of Austin has always been that way. I come back to this. There are very few places that can compete with Minnesota along this. It's the Bay Area of San Francisco, it's Austin, Texas a little bit, and it's really Boston. All of those places are horrible to drive in. It's impossible to buy a house. It's impossible to buy a house, and to be very honest, the safety, security, the quality, and the sense of community, we really have a lot to sell. And in a world where we said you could do some things remotely, having that concentration of intellect, of science, of community buying in is just really positive. And then to see the bipartisan nature of the legislature working on these things, people want to know where their tax dollars are going. And these issues is, how does an investment in Austin, Minnesota, the Hormel Institute, how does that impact Bemidji? How does it impact Duluth? And I think it's our job to tell that story. The city of Austin has always done a wonderful job. I remember years ago hearing that slogan, grow science, grow Austin, really set a tone for what we could do. So this idea of what does a future Minnesota look like, it looks a lot like what you're doing here. Strong communities invested together, public-private partnerships with private business investing back in, and the state doing the things that we're supposed to do. One of the things we're supposed to do is make sure you can get here safely. It's one of the reasons this morning we just announced some of the first money from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. $50 million is going to replace those 6 bridges over I-90 here in Austin. Those are tax dollars that make a difference. So you get strong schools, strong transportation, you invest in public education, and you invest the private sector to make a difference. That's where our future lies. And as people, as we struggle with some of the things, we wonder what the economy is going to look like, I would make the case that Austin, the Hormel Institute, and this partnership that Minnesota does so well is the model. So I want to just congratulate all of you, congratulate the community. We'll work together on this. The good news is in funding and things like the request to do the next expansion of this, I've been here for 2 previous ones where we've done it. We've got some federal money. The only way that proposal gets done, it has to get done bipartisanly. That's the requirement, that it gets done. And we have to make the case that these projects benefit the state of Minnesota. And I think there's a strong case to be made that this is exactly the type of things that when you talk to people, they want to know their dollars are being spent wisely. They want to know where they're being spent. Our job is to talk about this and see the return. And the benefit on this is not just economic. The ability to have some breakthroughs, as I said, to improve health, to have healthier foods, to make more sustainable transportation or more sustainable climate issues we're working around, make our agriculture more efficient. It is an incredible opportunity that we have in Minnesota, and I appreciate the folks in this room understanding how to leverage that. So Dr. Clark, thank you for giving me a little bit of time. Thank you for your passion and enthusiasm about this. It matters. And the biggest thing I will just say at the end that just moves me in this is seeing that focus on our children, and the focus on giving them opportunities, and the focus on putting them in lab coats in front of the world's best equipment and talk to them about this. It is not a cliche. They're our future. And they're watching a world that feels chaotic. They're watching a world that feels divided. But when they're here, you can feel a community wrapping their arms around them, telling them they matter, telling them there's an opportunity, and don't get set out. You too can be a scientist. You too can work in this. You too can make a difference. And to see that happen in communities, whether they be rural communities across southern Minnesota or whether they be urban communities. And I think that's getting at the heart of, I talk a lot about one Minnesota where we're all in it together. You simply live it here every day, and I think that's a good thing. So Dr. Clark, thank you. I wish you all the best today.
Thank you so much. I just make a couple of observations. Everything that we do here, we try to do in a bipartisan way. Because of what we do, you can have money, you can have a wonderful quality of life, but if you don't have your health, what do you have? How do you use those advantages? If you don't have an education, how do you make a life? We believe those things are critical to what we do and what we do here every day. Cancer doesn't care how much money you make, where you live, who your parents were in many cases. They affect everybody. When we make a difference here, we make a difference everywhere. That's what research is all about. And that's true across the whole of the University of Minnesota. It's true for the Mayo Clinic, for our partners there. It's true across this entire state. When we make an advance here, we make an advance for the world. That's what we want to do. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the people who came before and the help that we had for this institute before. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Governor Walz. Thank you to the many people and leaders in our community who are sitting in the audience, so I just can't call you all out because there's so many of you. But on a daily basis, you help us do what we do. And we have, as a consequence of that, an obligation. We have an obligation to do the best that we can with every penny that we get. But we also have an obligation to the future, because the people who will come after us will only be able to do what they do because of what we do today, just as we're here because of what people did in the past. There is a continuum that goes from the past into something that we call the future. And we're on that path, and we must keep focused on that path, because we do have that obligation to the children that are here today, who we may meet, but also to their children in the future, that we continue to offer each generation something better than what came before. And the best way to do that is to give them their help.